Hello, and a very warm welcome to another session of Inspired Healthy Living with Purva. Every year we celebrate Are You OK Day, which reminds us to connect and check in with our loved ones. This simple act can protect them from committing suicide. 8 Australians die every day by suicide, and 75% of those who take their own lives are males. These are serious numbers. And can this be prevented? Can we play an important role in preventing these numbers? To talk more about this topic and discuss some ways you can take care of your mental health, we have invited Gina Luzzi with us today. Gina is a registered psychologist. She has over 12 years of clinical experience working in private, corporate, and community setting with young people, adults, couples, and families. So, without further delay, I would like to invite Gina Lizzie with us today. Thank you. Hello, Gina, and a very warm welcome to our session today.
Thank you, Purva. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure, and we really appreciate you taking this time out for us and being here today. It's really valuable. So thank you so much.
Pleasure, my pleasure.
I'm sure you guys are the most busiest people in these times, in these tough times. How have things changed for you all? What do you think about it?
There has been definitely a shift in what I'm seeing with clients presenting. So there's a lot more stress, there's a lot more sadness and frustration, particularly with the stage 4 lockdown in Victoria. So there has been a definite change in the demand for mental health services. So the movement to do and offer telehealth has made a huge difference for people. So I know that's not generally the most comfortable method of counselling with your therapist, but if really that's one of the only ways we can do it, it's better than nothing. And you know
Absolutely.
what? I'm actually pretty impressed that clients have actually adapted quite well. So they've probably surprised themselves.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like similar with us being dietitians, I think this is something that it could be easily changed to a telehealth than as compared to a physiotherapist or a podiatrist. And
Yes.
yes, people have been very welcoming in accepting this because I think they're understanding the importance of health at this stage. Nothing is more important than your health, whether it's mental or physical or nutritional, whatever part it is.
Yes. And it all links together too.
It
So
all,
you're right. Yeah.
absolutely. So before we begin, my first question is why a psychologist? What is the most rewarding thing about your career? What do you think?
I would say that helping people achieve their goals and recognize their own skills is probably one of the things that I find most enjoyable. So that's a really happy moment for me when a client comes to me and says, I've actually been able to manage this experience or this problem. And, you know, that they'll thank me and I'll swap that right back and say, you've done this. And we sort of have a mini moment of celebration. So that's definitely how I would answer that question, Purva.
Okay, perfect. And now, we know that we are approaching or we celebrate Are You OK Day. And this year it's on the 10th of September. And it is mainly celebrated about uh, motivating people to get connected with their loved ones to prevent the suicide rate. Now, in this pandemic, in this situation, or generally also, what do you think about the whole, suicide rate situation? And the theme of this year is so important. I feel that it is more than beyond going to Are You Okay? What do you have to think about that? What do you think?
I'm definitely quite excited that this conversation is happening now and at such a pivotal time. I think Are You OK Day is really about creating those and starting those life-changing conversations. It could be the difference between saving a life. So we really need to equip ourselves with the knowledge of how to connect with our peers, our families, our friends, to try and get connected to them in a way that helps support them through this journey. And through lockdown, through the pandemic, there has been probably a lot of stress on most of us, probably more stress than we've ever experienced. And we're adjusting to something so much bigger than us. So definitely talking to your friends and family is so important. So this year's topic, you're right, Perva, or this year's theme is, there's more to ask than are you okay? So asking that question is really only one of 4 steps that we're trying to recommend that people get across. So ask is number 1. 2 is listen to their response. 3 is encourage action. And 4 is checking in a later stage. So if you want more information, or if anyone you know wants more information, I would head to the website, because there are so many resources there and hints on how to handle the question. Perhaps if someone says that they're not okay, what do you do with that information? What if they say I'm fine? What if they're not prepared to talk? So informing yourself is really important, I think, in managing these conversations, and particularly connecting with people right now is paramount.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Because I feel my next question is related to this only, that the way we see the world and the way someone who is dealing with depression, anxiety, or any other mental illness or health condition, anything related to that, see the world, it's a whole lot of difference there. And that knowledge gap in people is there. You know, they won't understand this thing, and how pivotal or how important it is to understand that someone with dealing with depression or anxiety would have an absolute different perspective to even the smallest of the things. What do you think about
You're right. Well, it's complex, but if I was to simplify it as best as I could, I would say that people with depression and anxiety perhaps are more influenced to perceive things in a slightly more negative or threatening way. So you could imagine that this pandemic is scary enough and sad enough, and it's bringing about lots of distressing changes, and having more added to that by the way that you're perceiving things, and that's out of their control, of course, Perva, but I suspect that encourages people to want to withdraw and feel a little bit less hopeful about the future.
True, definitely. And I think dealing with someone with this is really important, and just letting them know that it's okay and understanding them, giving them that ear, as you rightly said, you know, it's more about than just asking, are you okay? It's the 4 steps after that. That's really true. That's absolutely correct. Now, the other thing is that when we're dealing with these people, when we're dealing with someone who's dealing with depression or suffering with anxiety or any other mental illness, rather, what works best, sympathy or empathy? That's something where I think.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say that those terms are often used synonymously. However, they have different meanings. So empathy is the ability to understand how other people are feeling, and sympathy is really about sharing those experiences, those emotional experiences. Now, when you ask what works best, I would say empathy, and that's because we don't necessarily have to share emotional experiences with someone to understand them. That can often cause a bit of disconnection, but empathy has the opposite effect. So it enables us to connect with someone and really draw them a little bit closer, even though we probably can't exactly feel what they're feeling, but we can understand it to the best of our ability.
Do you want to give a little example, real life example of, you know, the terminology or the words, or how the situation would be dealing with in a sympathetic manner or in an empathetic manner? Because this is a difference which I think a lot of us doesn't know. A lot of us are not aware about this. And I think it's very huge for them to understand this difference when they're dealing with someone with any of the depression or anxiety.
Sure. So an example would be something like if someone was to tell you that they're finding homeschooling really stressful, and you might say to them in a sympathetic way, I know what you're feeling, I know what you're going through. The empathic version of that would be something like, I understand this must be hard for you. So I wonder if that shift, that example, it really highlights that shift in, rather than sharing their experience, you understand their experience.
Okay, there we go. So the basic point is that using more about the understanding word, and then reiterating it or rewording it on them, not putting it on ourselves. Am I right?
Yeah, so separating yourself a little bit from it can be one way to get that right. And that can often appear to someone as if you are more willing to listen to their experience rather than share it. So yeah, you're right, Pev, a good way to summarize.
Great, wonderful. That's nice. I think that's and this is something very basic and a wonderful example that you've given here, and which can be understood by everybody very simply and implemented in their daily life very quickly. That's wonderful.
Yeah, great.
Great. And now comes the question about the role of family and friends in preventing things like suicide. What is the right thing? How do they know? Are they actually helping their family or friends, or they're harming them? This is, people are so scared about it to even deal with it.
Yes, and I'm glad you've raised the fear issue too, Peva, because there has been sort of I don't know if it's really coming from here, maybe sort of more of an archaic influence here, but there's a fear that if we talk about suicide, we might influence it somehow and perhaps make it more likely to happen, when the research suggests the very opposite. So when people commit suicide or feel suicidal, one of the things that I notice are that they tend to feel alone. And they tend to feel like they're not capable of receiving help, or there isn't enough help for them out there. So talking to people who are suffering and asking whether or not they need help is breaking through some of those illusions that suicidality can bring about. So we want them to know that there is help out there for them and that they're not alone. So they're the two messages I would put across in terms of protecting your family and friends from suicide.
True, that's really good. And as you rightly said, that just letting them know that there is help available. And then I think the stigma around seeking that help is also very huge. Like people would feel that, oh, I don't need any help, or why should I go type. So when do they know, or what is the point where a person would realize that, okay, now that is it, I need help?
Yeah, and that might be hard for someone who's becoming more and more distressed and more isolated. So that's why connecting with people is really important. But I am really pleased to see what shift there has been in the last 10 years. So I'm noticing that people don't necessarily wait until they get to that really serious point in their mental health. People are starting to act more proactively. So that's where I would sort of recommend to keep in touch with yourself. And if there is a question about whether or not you should seek help, then maybe follow through with that and see whether or not it works for you. But I would definitely say if you're noticing a change in your functioning, so that's one way we measure if whether someone is mentally unwell. So I would ask myself, am I less likely to pick up the phone and want to talk to people? Am I not looking after myself in terms of my diet and my sleep? Am I slipping in terms of my commitments? So if you notice changes like that, that can be one of the biggest signs that perhaps you might benefit from talking to someone.
That's the signs are very simple but very easy to pick up. I think if someone is in tune with themselves, so it's a very good thing. Really nice. Thanks for that. Now,
no worries.
As we've just discussed, that this pandemic has affected everybody and it's not a good thing. But I think for school kids, it is a very tricky phase for them. It's the unpredictability that they don't know what's going to happen next, whether homeschooling or staying at home, and then the pressure of homeschooling. It's not that great. It's not a very happy equation. So what do you have to suggest about that? What do you have to deal about that? What do you think?
Well, I actually like that you've raised this, because I don't know that school kids are really getting that much airtime around concerns about adjusting. So kids of all ages throughout school have had significant impacts to their routines. And I would say probably year 10s to year 12 clients seem to be the most pressure and distressed at the moment, but that's not to say that there has been an impact across the board. So I would say that paying attention to how your children are going is so important right now. So I suppose we sort of focus a lot on ourselves and how we're going to work from home and how we're going to separate work from home and how we're going to continue our obligations and commitments and finances. But I think children do need a little bit more attention at this stage too. So I've written a few suggestions down of how you could
Wow, that
support
would
a
be
young person.
great.
Yeah. So I would say try to keep up some sort of routine. So that would generally creating a bit of structure in the day can help the day feel like it's passing, and that you sort of know what's coming next, what you might be doing next. So that can help relieve anxiety in children and relieve a bit of boredom too, I suppose. The other thing is you can try and be a little bit creative about starting new activities, so perhaps a new hobby or a new style of exercise perhaps. But in saying that, I don't want people to feel the pressure to be too productive or to learn new skills or come out with learning a new language. I really do think you have, one of the other key strategies here is you really have to be kind to yourself and kind to your children as well. So if you're having a rough day or your child's having a rough day, that would be a good day to choose to be a bit more lenient perhaps with the household chores or similar things like that. I would also say healthy eating and sleep are really important right now, and that also includes your children. So that's something I would really sort of try and encourage, reinforce. Managing your own anxiety is so important. So I know that can really determine whether or not you act empathically towards your child, or perhaps snap in a way that you didn't really intend to. Staying in touch with their peers is really important. So their whole lives are at school often. So not seeing their friends or talking to them in a different way is probably something that they're worried about or they're missing. So even if it's a friendly chat or a FaceTime or sending a message to one of their friends, to encourage that communication, that can be really helpful. That can help remind them that they are still very connected. I would encourage people to make plans, including your children. So that might be for tomorrow and it might be for after the lockdown ends. So what things can you look forward to? And it sort of helps them to have a bit of a sense of control of what's happening. I would keep them informed. I think that's really important. Depending on what their age is, you would really try and get some developmentally appropriate language around what's happening. But I definitely think that everyone should be informed. There's always just a bit of a tact on how you deliver that information depending on how old they are. But I think the information is important. And also to seek help for them if they need it. So there are resources available for young people as well. So that's in a brief list of the suggestions.
Wow. They're really nice. And I think every suggestion that you've pointed out is so important and it is so valuable for not just kids. And first to do, like you say, you have to have a full cup to pour, you can't pour an empty cup. So
Yes.
taking care of yourself first was a very important point in managing your anxiety, and then you can look after your kids. It's really important.
You're right. Yeah.
I would love you if you can share some resources that you've just mentioned and we can share it with everybody. That would be just great so that they can, get benefit from that.
I'd flick you an email for sure, definitely.
Awesome. Beautiful. That would be amazing. Now, the other thing which I think we've heard a lot about, but not that much. I mean, I don't know why we're not seeing the numbers or we're not seeing the realistic stats about what is happening at the domestic violence end.
Yes, so this is such an important spot to talk about. Yeah, so I'm glad you've raised that, Purva. Yes, the stats have changed in terms of measuring domestic violence, and there might be a number of different reasons for that. So there is still research going on about what the picture is looking like and what the shifts mean. However, what I like about how Victoria has approached this is that they've chucked and thrown a lot of funding at support services surrounding domestic violence. And particularly now, for some people, home is not a safe place for them. So services and support is so important. So if you know anyone that needs support around domestic violence, there is sort of a centralised information and counselling and support service called, you can access that. It's called 1-800-RESPECT, and that's the number you would type in. And I can give you some more information if you like, Purva, through email about how to access that. But using your phone in the keypad, if you type in 1-800-RESPECT and give them a call, they can direct you to a service that is appropriate for you. So definitely speaking out in whatever way they feel comfortable is so important right now, that you're not alone.
But then, with this whole situation of being locked down, everybody home and on surveillance kind of a thing for 24/7.
Yeah.
Now with the new curfew timings, and you just cannot go out. Only one person can go out. How? I mean, do you see cases that they're not even able to speak up about what's happening to them?
Yes, so sometimes that feeling of being almost the illusion that we're alone, and particularly in a domestic violence situation, there's not a lot of openness usually around what's going on in the home,
Mm.
but they're coming up with a lot of new ways and new ways to communicate your situation rather than having that confronting conversation with a doctor, for example. So that might bring a lot of fear for clients that I've worked with, for example. They say, what if my husband asks about what happened here today? What will I say? So there's lots of services there to help relieve that confronting experience, but still allow them to have access to support.
That's really nice. And I feel with domestic violence also, there's a lot of time that they would wait till the end when things get really worse and out of hand before acting proactively on that. So
Yep.
what do you feel about that? How important it is to act proactively and take steps?
Yeah, and I think that's really hard to make those steps. So sometimes at the end, when the decision is a lot more clear, it can almost be a matter of survival, and that kicks in a different mode of action. However, you are right, acting earlier can sometimes prevent worse outcomes.
Mm.
So I would suggest talking to people. This is how we break the cycle. Talking to people that you know and that you trust and that can offer you support. So you're right, getting out early is can be really crucial for some families, but also knowing what to do with that. So getting the right support is so important.
It's really, really good. Now, as a dietitian, we advocate the role of good food in mental health and mental health and food. I mean, we believed in this connection massively, that there is this
Yeah.
massive connection about this. What do you think about that?
Well, I think you're right because the research really backs what you're saying. So, poorer mental health is associated with poor health, physical health, and overall well-being. So, what we tend to notice is that uh, poorer mental health can sometimes be associated with things like obesity, for example. And there's a lot of supporting research that suggests that if you focus on your overall well-being, it tends to have positive outcomes on your mental health. So that research really sums up why we need to be healthy in and out. So what we put in our mouths is so important in how our body functions. So we want that body and mind connection to be nourished, and one way to do that is through food.
True. And do you think, are there any superfoods for brain, for mental health?
Oh, that's a bit of a tricky one. I would probably be looking up the research on that. Perhaps I can flick you something if I find something. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we've been working a lot on that. We've done a lot of research, and yes, we found out that omega-3 fatty acids are one of
Yep.
the nutrients that we really recommend. And apart from that, low GI carbs, which people think they are the worst enemy for them, like carbohydrates. But yes, so we definitely
Yeah.
recommend them to take good amount of carbohydrates in their diet also, because the diets have been crazy these days, especially with all the fat diets happening. It's been
Yes. Yeah, and I'm happy that you're advocating for carbs. It's definitely one of my favourites, but also dispelling some of the myths around dieting and
really,
misinformation.
yeah, true. And even gut health, like, we advocate good, healthy gut health also because of we know the gut and brain axis, that how important it is again to maintain overall health.
Yes, and you're right. And there has been more research about gut health and the link to depression too. So it sounds like you're all across it.
Great, perfect. And now, the role of physical activity also. What do you think about that? About maintaining the mental health? Because as I always say in all my sessions, the end is always coming out to be, because they're all health related, to good food
Yeah.
and your physical activity. So I feel those
Yeah.
are the two main, and then your stress and anxiety and in how your mindset. So these are the three pillars of your life. They're so important for you. So what do you think about physical activity?
think its impact or its potential to impact mental health in a positive way is huge. So I'm a big advocate for exercise. The
Mm-hmm.
great thing about exercising for mental health and physical health means that you don't necessarily have to do a 3-hour run or a 90-minute weight resistance exercise. You really, walking can just be more than enough. So walking in terms of managing mental health can have effects like relieving tension, relieving stress, improving mood, because it does have an impact on the chemicals in our brain that are responsible for keeping our mood level. So I really do think that's quite an important step in managing your mental health. But you can even break it down. I mean, if you're finding it difficult to start exercising, you could even break it down into really small goals. So things like, 5 minutes a day for a week and seeing how you go with that and perhaps increasing as you go. You could also add some external rewards in, for example, your favorite TV show that night or something that really helps to incentivize you. But sometimes just knowing that you can do it and feel good after is sometimes reward enough.
Yeah, I know that's very important. Like, the other day I had this client of mine, and she shared the same experience that, when I start eating healthy and when I start getting on my physical activity routine, it motivates me so much more to do more, which I could never find that motivation in myself. So
Yeah, we
that's
want to keep feeling good, don't we? So that makes perfect sense.
that's great. That's great. So in the end, like, these are crazy times. And I think
no doubt.
no doubt. And I think the most important thing about this time is the unpredictability. You don't know whether you're in stage 4, whether you're stage 3, what you can do, what you can't do. It is so much insane out there. So how can someone stay happy, healthy, and more mentally fit at this time? Do you have any suggestions for them?
Yeah, sure. I mean, certainty creates a lot of anxiety for most of us, depending on what our perspective is on certainty. So sometimes in our work with my clients, we try and change or challenge our beliefs about certainty. So perhaps we don't necessarily need to know what's happening next to enjoy what's happening now. So I would say to people, connecting with others is so important. We want to make sure that we don't fall into the trap of thinking that lonely means that we're alone. No. Everyone is here. We're still very loved and cared for. So just reminding ourselves of that and giving that gift to other people is really important. I would say also focusing on what you can control. So that can give us a bit of sense of ownership. So perhaps focusing on what you're able to put into place or what you're able to achieve rather than what you're missing out on or what you're not able to control. So it's really about changing your focus. Contributing to your community can be really helpful now. So that might be as simple as wearing the mask and doing the right thing, listening to some of the restrictions that are in place, even though I know it can be hard sometimes, but that can give us a sense of purpose. I would also say doing things that you enjoy are really important now. So I know there's a lot of pressure for us to keep up with our commitments, but we also need to make time for ourselves as well. And the final point I'll make is being kind to yourself. I think that's really important. So if your level of expectations needs to come down a bit to meet where you're at right now in terms of your capabilities, then do that. Give that gift to yourself. You'll feel better for it.
That's huge. I mean, giving the gift of being kind to yourself is really huge. I feel that's great.
Yeah.
And with the same thing of picking up the hobbies and all, doing something creative that you were talking about, after 19 years, I did a dance performance.
Oh my gosh!
Prepared myself for it, and I did one, and I recorded a video, and I posted it on YouTube and social media.
How
After
fun!
19 years, I was like, oh my God. And when I counted it, it's like it's an entire, life span is over like 19 years.
Well done. Did it feel good?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, I felt accomplished. I was like, wow, I've done it finally. And, I've posted it. It's there. Everybody's seeing it, whether good or bad, whatever. I don't care. I've done it for myself.
Yeah, well done. That's exactly the point. Well done, Forever.
Great. And, the other important point is like, do we have any small specific techniques or strategies or ways of thinking for, especially for self-help, CBT-based
Yeah.
self-help things, if you could share with us, that would be really great.
Yeah.
If you have
I
anything
think
to
the
say
best way,
about that.
yeah, sure. I think the best way to answer that question is to point you in the direction of the resources. So I will probably select some that are psychologically endorsed, so ones that are reputable, and they can really give you some steps on how to manage some of that distress yourself. One of the beautiful things that has come out of the lockdown is that the government has allowed more funding for Medicare and mental health referrals. So what that means is that you were previously eligible for 10 sessions with a counsellor under the mental health care plan, or a psychologist, sorry, under the mental health care plan. And now that's been extended to 20. So there is an opportunity to access more help there as well. So if you do need a bit more support than what you can offer yourself, just know that there are more entitlements now for Victorians.
Especially. And yes, I think you should definitely take that opportunity. Seek advice from an expert. That is one thing that I always advocate a lot, because we've seen it in our field also. That
Oh,
definitely the internet, the Google advice can go wrong
oh,
anytime.
geez. Yes, the right help makes all the difference. And yes,
The
we
difference.
advise not to Google too much about information like that.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gina. It was such a pleasure talking to you. And I think you've given us such valuable tips and inputs that people can take home and just start practicing daily on regular basis.
My pleasure, Pooh. Thanks for having me.